see where we go. All right?
Okay.
The next motion, I put your hands on the hips.
Hey, Winnie, happy birthday. May you have many, many more. And here we are in Hawaii. Wow. You're here for me, and now we're here for you. I love you. God bless.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, that was 2014. I spent about my 73rd birthday in Hawaii. And here I am at my 75th birthday here in the M&M studios with my family.
Big change.
Dominique, Sharpton, Jusani, Mars, and my great-granddaughter, Jaylyn Mars. Mars, woo!
Wait, he doesn't know who you are?
Jaylyn! And of course, my brother, Graham Weatherspoon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The reason why I open up on Hawaii is because we talk about Obama and how laid back he is and how cool he is. And I had to see his early beginnings. I had to go to Hawaii to see. We went the year before for my wife's birthday, so this is the second year that we'd gone. The first year, Graham's cousin showed us around the island, so we went around like natives and saw all the special parts. We saw where Obama learned how to surf, all right? And we saw where Obama went to high school. It looked like a college campus. I mean, it was really, really nice. And you can see how this man was raised, not in the hood, as we all, give reference to. But when you go to Hawaii, you see God's blessing. God is nature, and you see the beauty of the planet. And here we are today. Obama's in a situation where he's accused of all sorts of ills. He hasn't been given a break for the 8 years he's been in office. And the Republicans have blocked everything he tried to do. The day of his inauguration, they set out a plot to make sure he did nothing, do nothing Congress. And so I thought it was only appropriate on today to bring up the subject of Hawaii, of course. And I called President Obama a blessing from God. And on my 75th anniversary, I want to bless, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in all these years. And I just feel blessed that I'm still here. Mm-hmm. I get to be healthy and sane and have God in my life. That's the only thing that got me through. And with my family, Dominique, Sharpton, and Jusani from the Nan Huddle, and my great-granddaughter, Jaylyn, I wanted to give me a little idea, Jusani, of Obama's accomplishments. We want to talk about the positive things he's done in the last 8 years.
Well, of course, there's the the obvious fact in where he's the first black president in
Amen.
history. He was also the first black president to be re-elected by a great margin
Right.
for a second term. And that really stood out to me because we're making history, and that's really important. But my two favorite areas are mass incarceration and education equality.
Okay.
And especially education equality because I'm a schoolboy, obviously.
Mm-hmm. 12.
Yes, I am 12. But one thing that stood out to me is that he made the GI Bill so that veterans could come back from their wars and go back to school. And that was really
yeah, that's
important.
been there for a while.
That was really important to me because there are a lot of veterans that go out to war and sometimes can't return. So it's important to me that he thought about those veterans. Another thing is that he made it possible for people with low income and middle income. Students with low income and middle income were able to actually go to a decent or good college because of a bunch of acts that he put out, and that was really important to me. I feel like I got the opportunity that he passed out, and I was really blessed.
Wow, beautiful. Dominique, you have the fortune of actually meeting this man and going to Hawaii, I understand.
Yeah, I did go to Hawaii last year for my 28th birthday.
Oh,
29th birthday, wow. 30th year, good Lord. Yeah, so I did visit the city of Oahu and Waikiki, and it was definitely a breathtaking experience for me because, you know, I do love to travel, but one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that I got to visit the Pearl Harbor, and I got to see, you know, some of our nation's history, you know, right there and that beautiful island. And it's so many things that, you know, we need to be teaching our children that, you know, I was able to come back and share with Huddle and some of our young people, but the history of our cult, the rich history of our country is very important for us to know and to teach our children on so many levels. And while we're talking about President Obama and his contributions to America, and yes, I was definitely honored and blessed to be able to attend his private Super Bowl party with my father 4 years ago, and that experience to me was life lasting on so many ways. For one thing, you got to see the first black president of the United States, you know, in his comfortable setting, you know, no suit and tie, you know, very relaxed, very few people that were invited. So you got to really speak to him one-on-one. And for me, I felt like that was an opportunity that a lot of young people like myself, especially young women of color, would never have that opportunity to, let alone be in the White House. So for me to get that experience, and you know, Michelle Obama made me a sundae, and
What is she like?
and
What is she really?
I mean, I have to say, I was starstruck. Like, it took me like 10 minutes to even move. And my dad was pushing me like, are you going to say something? And I'm like, what do I say to the first black president and the first black, you know, first lady? But they are mesmerizing. They are beautiful, like, in person. And not only like on the outside, but on the inside. They were very warm and talk, you know, they took the time to talk to me. Out of all the people that were there, you know, Michelle looked at me and she's like, well, what are you up to? Like, what are you doing to contribute to society? And, you know, and it was like, oh, me? What? What could I say that could impress you, you know? And I could say nothing because she was already, you know, that moved that, you know, she could have the opportunity to invite people like me to the White House. And she said, you know, I'm going to be counting on you, Dominique, to have more conversations, you know, with young people to get the word out, to express that you can do this, that anyone in the world can be where I am. And for her to look at me and say that, you know, it really encouraged me as a person, as a leader, as an individual, as a Sharpton, as a member of NAN, you know, to go back in my community and really encourage young people that, you know, they can dream and they can accomplish their dreams and end up one day in the White House. You know, you never know. I could be sitting next to the next black president of the United States. And I'm sure that, you know, if Jusani put his mind to do that, he can accomplish it. And we've seen that with the Obamas. And so I really believe that they have brought the reality to us that, you know, we as Americans, we as black people, people of color, can reach further, can reach higher, and can achieve so much if we put our minds together and our skills and move our skills forward. We can accomplish so much. So that was great.
Fantastic. You know, Jaylyn just the first visit to the huddle was this last Monday.
Oh, okay.
Her first time there.
Yeah.
And we went over.
I felt like I was that person that was never into something like that. I was like a shy person, but I really spoke up to what I had to say. That's the first time I ever felt like that.
What was the topic of the week? What did they talk about?
They talk about this girl named Amy who got beat over a boy. It was like a boy. This is the kind of bulliness that is just like dumb because it's a boy. There's a whole bunch of boys in that school that you can date.
Right.
It was one boy and a whole group of girls just went after that one girl.
It brings me to this next point where we talked about the McDonald's brawl that happened last year in Brooklyn when, you know, this young woman was brutally beaten by a group of other young women in a public McDonald's in Brooklyn near Erasmus High School. And I remember the huddle going there to do a press conference, National Action Network huddle, to do a press conference calling for, you know, this violence to stop in our community because, you know, why is it happening? Where is this senseless violence coming from? Why is it that, you know, so many people are engaging in violence or feel like that's the outcome to solve our problems, you know? And furthermore, why are people spectating? Why are people standing by allowing these things to happen and not saying or doing anything?
Why is it girls nowadays? I mean, it used to be the guys, you know, going to blows. But girls liking to fight. I mean, that's no more high heels and gloves and, and daintiness. They're out there slugging it out.
Yeah, I mean, our culture, we've got to really hone in and, you know, we're talking about, you know, all of this culture.
Is it the music?
I was about to say, you know, Beyonce's recently is starting to step out with a whole, you know, being, you know, very forward with standing up and being strong and, you know, that whole personification. But in all actuality, violence kills and violence destroys communities. And we have got to, as a movement, as leaders in the community, we've got to continue the conversation, continue speaking out against it. You know, we're joined every week at the huddle by leaders in the community like Aisha Sekou from Street Corner Resources and Erica Ford from Life Camp, and those who have been in the trenches for years, really trying to eradicate violence in our communities. And it's like at the end of the day, you know, when does the cycle stop? When do we get to that victory point?
I was thinking about some of this today. I was on a forum at the Schaumburg last night? Man, I'm getting old. Monday night with the Sean Bell, not the Sean Bell, but the foundation that Nicole Paltry Bell has organized. And I was thinking today, we took the Bible out of the school. We took prayer out of the school. And we replaced prayer with metal detectors. And our young people think that to go in a building to be scanned is normal. It's not. It's abnormal. And what has been happening, the abnormal behavior is taking over as normal. Now, you can't, the two of you cannot relate to what I'm talking about with regard to prayer in the schools because that ended long ago. But I can relate to it. So as an older person, I look at the schools today and I look at the schools 50 years ago. And I can see the difference and I can determine which was better and which is worse. And with people like Winston and myself are gone, there's no point of reference. Did you have prayer in the schools when you went to school?
I did.
You did.
But that's because my parents put me in a school that made sure that we did that.
Okay. But in the public
and Betty
school,
Shabazz directed that.
public school, it's not there anymore. So a lot of things which are happening now are very detrimental to our youth. And it's important that parents draw the line in the sand in terms of, like, I know your parents have drawn, they've drawn the very, not just lines, deep trenches, you know, that you can't even vault over. And, you know, when the girl was beat, you know, you see these incidents and people are taking videos.
Yeah, that's the whole
They're
point.
taking video just to see the outcome. Look at this young lady who was beaten to death in the bathroom in the school.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, Amy
the
Jones.
16-year-old.
That case, beyond the McDonald's, we had the case of Christine Jorgensen in the 50s. A woman was murdered in the street in Queens in a nice neighborhood, and people heard her screaming, and nobody even called the police. And that was back in the 50s. So we really have to ask ourselves where we are spiritually, that we can be so insensitive to the suffering of another human being.
You know, I think it's the
that we don't
social
call for
media
help.
that brings so much attention to any little minor incident that everybody thinks with a Instagram you become famous. A lot of people become famous. I had an incident on the subway where this guy instigated these girls to fight just because he had his cell phone up there and wanted to get something good. And he just instigated. Oh, you ain't gonna take that. You know, go ahead. You know, he's a grown man. He must have been 40 maybe. He's into 35. All right, but he's instigating this whole momentum.
But
They're
if you have
playing
a
live.
cell phone,
Huh?
and if you have a cell phone and there's a situation going on, wouldn't common sense tell you to call the police instead of videoing it to get a reaction?
But people get reactions from, and they get, like I'm saying, they seek fame.
I think the problem is that common sense isn't too common anymore.
Out of the
Amen.
mouths of babes.
So see, you're blessed with parents to make sure that you understand that. And you're blessed. But there's so many unfortunate people that are just moved by just general emotion. You find most of the people on Facebook have nothing else to do but express themselves on Facebook. Most of the stuff they talk about, I mean, you talk to a psychiatrist, maybe, or to your mother or father.
Yeah,
or
some
something.
things just shouldn't be on Facebook.
But you do a fantastic job at the huddle, I mean, with the young people, and it's amazing. I love the one you did with the speech. You know,
Public speaking.
public speaking.
Well, I can't take all the credit. You know, my younger sister Ashley is
Oh, yeah, she's
the
a
founder
star.
of
man.
the huddle.
I was going to ask her to come on, but I know she wouldn't come on.
Well, Ashley's a little introverted, but she
Yeah.
is definitely a leader and a visionary. And
Yeah.
without her vision,
Yeah. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
at NAN, I mean, she's really helped to expand the youth department, you know, really helping to energize and motivate and activate young people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to move and to become active in the movement. And what does that mean? You heard Jusani talking about education equality and all of these things. Well,
Yeah.
there is an information deficit in our community where the information is not funneling to certain communities and certain neighborhoods. And so we have to do our part and make sure that we reach out and become that village to those children and those youth that need it, that
Yeah.
need the information, that need the tools. You know, we can't rely on the public school system to do that anymore. Unfortunately, it's just not happening. So we've got to create these avenues, these outlets, these venues that young people have the opportunity to come and get the tools that they need to learn about the African cultures and learn about, you know, politics and things that, you know, we really need to help us move forward and to succeed. So, yes, the huddle has been at NAN now for going on 3 years this December. And we are open for all who want to join us every Monday night at the House of Justice, 7 to 9. We invite all young people of all ages and those who associate with youth. If you are youth-minded or you associate, you know, with youth, we invite, you know, those of you who are mentors and leaders in the community to come and speak to our youth and encourage them, because that's what it's really all about. about. We also feed them for free.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good meal.
So,
It's a good
we
meal.
nurture their minds and their souls and their bodies all in 2 hours. And so we invite all of you all to, come out and join us. And thank you so much for,
it's my
for
pleasure.
always
Okay.
being there. I don't think you've missed a
pleasure.
Monday.
My
And it's
pleasure.
really important that our young people, see that. So
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Gilchrist.
I want to go into a serious topic for a minute. Our hero, Reverend Sharpton, our leader, our spiritual leader, disciple of Martin Luther King. I mean, just carrying on the legacy of Martin. The subject of Flint, Michigan, poisoning our children. I mean, people don't realize what lead poisoning does to the mind and to the future of any mind that's growing. So we're poisoning a whole group of people. And we just go to Politic Nation last Sunday and listen to Reverend Sharpton investigate or tell you the truth about Flint, Michigan. Be right back at you.
Everybody all set? All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Bill Schuette, and I have the privilege of serving as Michigan's Attorney General. Thank you for coming. Mayor Weaver, I'm so pleased you're here, and I admire greatly your leadership here in the city of Flint. On January 15th of this year,
Happening to children in Flint, Michigan. Like,
What's some of the things that you learned?
I learned that Flint is like pollution. Pollution is like everywhere in other countries. And people drink it still because they're thirsty.
Few minor errors, but we'll be right back at you.
They can't just...
This morning with the Flint water crisis. Tomorrow marks exactly 2 years since Michigan officials began poisoning their own citizens. That's the day the city stopped getting water from the Detroit system and started getting it from the Flint River. The city's emergency manager, who reported directly to Republican Governor Rick Snyder, ordered the switch. Here's the instant it happened.
Here's the plant. Here's the plant. Here it is.
Here's our moment, so I think we need a countdown from 3. 3, 2, 1. There it is.
For months, the river water ate at the pipes, creating high levels of lead. This week came the first criminal charges and a warning that more could be coming. Governor Snyder says he hasn't been questioned yet.
With respect to this investigation, I have not been questioned or been interviewed at this point in time. Our office has been cooperating. This tragic situation was the result of bad decisions by bureaucrats. Again, I always described it in terms of people lacking common sense.
The other legal development, a federal judge dismissed a class action suit seeking damages for the families. The lead attorney says he's going to refile the complaint. I'll talk to him in just a few minutes. But first, the fight to make Flint whole again. From the funding battle in Congress to replacing pipes, house by house.
4 of our boys have lead poisoning. I have lead poisoning, my fiance does. Our dog has died. One of our other sons has a bacterial infection in his stomach. caused from the water. So it's made a huge impact on us.
We're still living bottle to bottle, which is not humane, it's not feasible, and we still can't shower safely. It still burns our eyes, it's discolored, smells terrible, so it's still putting us at risk, so nothing's really changed.
Joining me now is Senator Gary Peters, Democrat from Michigan. Thank you for being here, Senator.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
Now, you've introduced a measure to provide over $70 billion to Flint over the next decade. What are you hearing from your Republican colleagues about the bill?
Well, the bill that we just introduced that you're referencing really deals with water infrastructure all across the country and deals with the problem of lead. Certainly a significant problem in Flint, but we know it is a problem in communities all across this country as well. But our specific legislation that we're working on to help Flint is one in which we tried to get in the energy bill. Unfortunately, we had a Republican blocking us from doing that, but we now are looking at a new path, hopefully to be able to move that forward in the weeks ahead.
Now, that Republican you're referring to is Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who blocked the Flint funding, and he said, quote, "Federal aid is not needed at this time." What's your response to that?
Well, I just think that's outrageous. Federal aid is needed. We have folks who are hurting. We've got people who are drinking out of bottled water, can't turn on the tap and have clean, fresh water. It's a basic right in this country. And whenever we've had a disaster anywhere in this country, the American people are there to help. Certainly the state of Michigan needs to do its part. It's primarily responsible, and they have to do a whole lot more. The governor has to step up and do a whole lot more, but that should not prevent the federal government from lending a helpful hand to people who are distressed and need help, and they can't wait any longer.
You mentioned the governor. You've held off calling for his resignation, saying the investigation needs to play out. But I have to ask, is the governor doing all that he can? Let's go back to you saying he should do more. What more should he be doing?
They need to be taking out those pipes. They've got lead service pipes. They've got to be pulled out quicker. They've got to have resources also for long-term funding. You know, my concern is about the residents of Flint over many decades. This is a long-term problem. This is not going to go away in a few months, particularly the children who've been impacted. You've got to have a future fund that's funded to make sure those resources are going to be there for many, many years.
Now, we've saw this week 3 people indicted on criminal charges, and the State Attorney General of Michigan says that it is going further. The case is not over. Should this give any confidence to the people of Flint that justice will be done?
Well, you know, justice has a couple forms. One is to make sure that those who are responsible are brought to justice, but also justice will be done when we're fixing the problem, when residents in Flint can turn on their tap and know they have complete confidence in the water. And justice is about knowing that the children who have been poisoned are going to have long-term fund to help them, and seniors and everybody. So that's got to be our primary focus.
What about some kind of compensation for those that have incurred medical expenses, that'll have permanent damage for their children? Yes, clearly people need to be held accountable criminally or otherwise, but that does not deal with the cost that has been incurred at no fault of their own from many of the thousands of citizens in Flint that have been impacted by this.
You're absolutely right, and that's really has to be the focus. That ultimately will be the judge of whether or not justice has been served on the victims of this catastrophe. So we have to make sure there is long-term funding available. You've got to make sure folks have proper nutrition, which is an important mitigating factor for people who have been exposed to lead. You've got to have education programs, wraparound programs, and health care. And this is not something that's going to go away in a few months or even a few years. This is a decade-long problem, and that's why I'm hoping we set up a future fund, and we've been calling on the governor and the state legislature, set up a future fund to make sure the people of Flint know that the resources will be there for them to take care of them for many, many years.
Senator Gary Peters, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Now to...
You know, it's...
As you see, we have a serious problem here in one of our major cities in America. But you know what's really criminal about this whole thing? These people are paying for the water. And you have people with foreclosures from not paying their water bill. and their homes being taken away for dirty water. Now, all it would have cost them is $100 a day to clean up this water. Now, now I would suggest the Army Corps of Engineers come in and just complete the infrastructure. There's a whole but the Republican Party is blocking everything you try and do. Here again, Obama's going to Flint, Michigan in the next couple of days because May 4th. So how do we handle all this stuff here? The disruption of the Republicans. Jusani?
Well, I know that, as you mentioned earlier, the Republicans had a meeting to try to get rid of everything the Democrats could do, and especially Obama could do. Maybe we could have a counter to that in Michigan. Maybe we could have a bunch of Democrats meet and decide on ways where it could be more effective and get past the Republicans blocking us instead of trying to break them down, so that we are being positive instead of negative.
That's November 4th, this next election coming up.
That's right.
Very
That's
true.
the next time.
By November 5th,
don't forget,
Democrats
vote this year. That'll solve that right there. Right, Jusani?
That's right.
You know, it's the fact that we spent $1 billion a day in Iraq for a period of 8 years, and they wouldn't finance the project to provide the citizens of this country, in this major city in this country, with clean drinking water. Children, adults, the elderly, the greatest resource of any nation is in its people. And of that, it's children. And if your people are sick, your country cannot progress. You will spend more money trying to provide health care and medical coverage for people than if you just take care of the cause. It's every city, every major city, New York, you know, we have old pipes here too.
Yeah.
You know, it's an issue. A lot of people in New York don't drink tap water. They buy, I haven't drank tap water in I don't know how long, but you know, it is a fact.
But you can, and you won't die from it.
Well, I don't drink chlorinated water. I'm not even, it's not so much the lead, it's the chlorine, because chlorine is a carcinogen. And there are people now being tested with chlorine showing up in their blood.
But what happened there? New York used to have the best water in the world.
That's what they say. But if you want to believe it, you believe it. But you're not supposed to have chlorine in your blood. No level of chlorine is acceptable in human blood.
But we're talking about lead poisoning now.
Well, lead, chlorine, fluoride, which they say, oh, you got to save your teeth. You don't need fluoride to save your teeth.
If you swallow fluoride, you're pretty much dead.
Yeah. The people in Alaska didn't have cavities until they were introduced to toothpaste. So everything that they're telling you is not true, but you really have to start thinking for yourself and do the best that an individual can do to protect themselves. And in Flint, it's virtually impossible. They have to brush their teeth, they have to take a shower, they have to bathe, and everything around them is toxic. The lady said her son has a bacterial infection in his stomach. And what that will lead to down the road, God only knows. So it's not just lead, there are other things in the water that the people have been drinking. And I'm sure they're not telling them what microbes are in the water. And even chlorine doesn't kill all pathogens in water. It only kills about 97%. So, you know, all of these things, it's important that we research. When, you know, in school you study. And we don't stop studying after we graduate from school. We have to continue to researching and obtain information.
But what sort of affront to our intelligence is that this has been going on for 2 years. Yet the GM car manufacturers complained to the governor about its poisoning or ruining their
ruining the metal
machines. And yet they continue to supply the humans with bad water and charge them for it. I mean, this is crazy. Why isn't the entire Congress upset about this? I mean, how can the Republicans deny aid, $70 billion or sending all these unemployed people there can dig a ditch, dig up a pipe. It doesn't take a scientist to dig up a hole and change the pipes. Why aren't all these unemployed people in Flint starting on programs like this? Why isn't the president going to Flint and bringing in the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yeah, you can, once you have a backhoe to break up the pavement, you can dig out the rest of it. You know, there are a lot of the unemployment rate, as Tamika had pointed out when she was here, the high rate of unemployment in Flint, Michigan, I think it's 40% or something like that. People could get work. You don't need the people who are in the Army Reserves to come. They're already getting paid. They have jobs. And they're getting paid by the government at the same time. Bring in the equipment, pull up the asphalt, and let the men dig out the pipes.
Okay.
You'll need your welders to cut, let the welders cut. But there's a large portion of that work can be done by unemployed men.
Right.
And a man needs to have a job. So if you're contributing to the rebuilding of the infrastructure in your neighborhood and in your city, you know, you can stand and say, you know, I worked on this project, just as men worked on government projects during the Depression, when Roosevelt set up all the programs to start building highways, putting up buildings. This could be a remake of the same program, not just for Flint, but it could be something that could be rolled out nationwide.
Because the lead poisoning thing doesn't stop at Flint.
No,
I
not at all.
in Newark and several other major cities. So, but what was I going to say? Flint being the focus point of all this, Obama had proposed legislation years ago for infrastructure improvement when he first started. Now, what happened? That was blocked by. And maybe these Flint, Michigans, or could have been prevented years ago. So again, we have a positive foot forward by President Obama, and it's stopped again by the Republicans.
I'm glad to see that they are starting to take the steps to accountability, because at the end of the day, someone definitely needs to be held accountable for this, for justice for the residents of Flint, but also, like Mr. Graham was saying, the long-term effect that this has on the residents is detrimental, and so it's going to take more than Flint, more than the state of Michigan. It's going to take all of us really to lend our hand, or lend our support where we can, because this is going to be a long-term process of healing for the residents, and for the succession of Flint. So we all, Mary Pat Hector, our national youth director, when was getting a campaign of young people to take water in. Okay, yes, we've got to do that. Charles Williams from our Detroit chapter was probably one of the first people on the scene.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, talking about this. Why did it take so long for it to come out? Why did it take so long for for the government and for the media to actually start exposing the problems there? How many other cities are dealing with these, like you said, similar issues that are not being exposed? And how do we delve those out? And
What's
how do we
the
deal with
EPA
those
doing
issues?
about this?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
They're being lied to.
These are the questions that we need to start asking, and these are the issues that we need to start mobilizing around, for sure.
Now, they mentioned in there that the class action lawsuit was thrown out. Do you know what a class action lawsuit is? Okay.
The second part of the speech to talk about that.
Yeah, a class action lawsuit is when a group of people come together, they get an attorney to file a lawsuit against another entity. It could be the government, it could be another individual, it could be the police department, it could be the fire department. People who have been damaged egregiously, that means very badly damaged in a way, and where it never should have happened, they can file a class action lawsuit. But the government threw out the class action lawsuit against Flint, Michigan. And I don't understand how the federal government, or why the federal government would throw out a class action lawsuit against Flint, Michigan, and so many people have been injured, so many children are damaged, so many adults are damaged, people's hair is falling out, their skin is changing, and I don't understand how the federal government and the Justice Department could throw that suit out.
I really don't understand how Republicans can be so cold-hearted. Because the way they treated when they went to Congress, an investigation, they were quite pleasant to the governor and cut down the EPA.
Smiling in your face all the time.
But wow, I just don't understand. I'm sure you have, you're aghast with all this, right?
It's pretty disgusting. I mean, I think that this should be actually charged as genocide because when you think about it, it's killing a number of people. It's basically a mass killing. It's just put in a way that you don't think of it as criminalizing. A large portion of the popularity doesn't think that this is murder. This is a huge murder. It's genocide. I think the people, they should take out, like Obama has started, take out nonviolent drug offenders and actually put people like this, who are actually criminals, in the jail cells that actually hold nonviolent drug offenders that maybe have a little weed baggie or like something.
You know,
in their
that's
jacket.
a great idea, to file a petition in The Hague for crimes against humanity, and these are crimes against humanity. That's a very good idea.
Well, the prosecutor says that this is just the beginning. This is just the start. I think the governor has to go, because he initiated this whole thing by appointing the, what's it called?
You literally saw him press the button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You saw him press the button. It was like a space movie, like 3, 2, 1. It was literally
to do
like
what?
he
Planned
held.
genocide.
Okay,
But
so
see, what they neglected to do was to spend $100 a day to purify the water. $100 a day, and all this would have
They knowingly and intentionally did what they did,
to save $100
knowing
a day.
what the end result would be. And it is criminal. They exhibited what's called a depraved indifference to human life, meaning like, all right, if I take my gun and I stand outside the building and I cover my eyes and start shooting, it's very reckless. Is it possible I could kill somebody walking in the street in Manhattan? Yes. A depraved indifference means not only is it reckless, but I don't care if I kill somebody.
Right.
And that's what these men have done. They knew that that water was poisonous, and they didn't care, and they still went ahead and did what they wanted to do. Not what they had to do, but they did what they wanted. And none of them live in Flint. They're not drinking that water.
Right.
Their children are not drinking that water. Their children are not bathing in that water. So they knowingly and intentionally did it because they don't care about the lives of the people living there. And you're right, they should be prosecuted.
But you know what I most don't understand
Blacks
is...
and whites, there are all kinds of people living in white, black, Asian, Latinos, but they are poor people. And it is beyond race, it's about the economics, it's about the treatment of the poor in this country.
You can wipe them out and build whatever you want.
Thank you.
Why don't they want to help the others that have the Flint water and they know they need help?
Good question.
Well, they've, you know, done certain things in the city. You know, they set up water stations and things, but only, you know, if you're elderly, if you don't have a car, if you don't have a proper ID, you can't get you can't even get the water from the free water stations. So it's like, you know, they're even being selective with the help that they're giving, which, you know, like Jusani said, I mean, it's just pure genocide. There's no other justification because the help that they've received hasn't even helped. So at what point do you draw the line and say, okay, you know, what needs to be done now and why isn't that happening?
So if they had the job, but they're not helping, so they shouldn't have the job at all.
Good point.
From the mouths of babes, right? It makes so much sense, right? But what even makes less sense to me is that when the GM people complain about it messing up the machinery, I mean, there's the real.
But they
poison water in the pipes is
water.
probably messing up the machine.
Right.
But why would they feed that to the people?
Right.
And they know it's messing up machines.
But they rerouted the water to the GM plant, so they got the better water.
Right.
And it didn't affect the machinery. Right. It shows you how some of these politicians think. They're only thinking about money, and they don't care about the people. That's why voting is critical. You don't put somebody in office just because they're black. You don't put somebody in office just because they're a woman. You don't put somebody in office just because they're a Democrat and you're a Democrat. You put somebody in office because they're the best person for the job, regardless of the political party, regardless of their sex, regardless of their race. We have to really examine the candidates to see whether or not this person is the person that should be there. We can't get caught up in emotionalism and all that stuff. Because once they're in office, whatever they do affects us, whether it's good or it's bad. And that's why voting is so critical. They voted for a governor. He put a man in position to run the water treatment, and that man wound up poisoning the people.
And got on and publicly said he had no idea. I was sitting in the court. Nan took a bus down there.
That's right.
When Governor Schneider, the day that he testified at the Supreme Court hearings about this,
what was that like?
Literally raised his hand and said he had no idea this was happening for 2 years. They went through emails that he received in his inbox, things, messages that informed him about the crisis in Flint and the lack of response. And he still, uttered that he didn't know. So it's at the end of the day, how is this continuing, But then we go back to the Eric Garner. This man was killed on tape.
Yeah. Right.
So,
and you didn't see what you saw.
Not right. So nowadays, it's like anything could just fly by and people are going to accept it. At what point are we going to say when are we going to change this?
Right. At the beginning of the show, I remember we were talking about publicity, and I think that's a huge problem. The Eric Garner thing, a bunch of situations that are really criminal have all been recorded uncoincidentally by phone or by camera. And I feel like we are somehow recording things but not exposing people when they actually need to be exposed. And I think that's a problem, because if you're there to record the entire thing, why are some things not showing up that you need to show up, and the other things that you don't need to show up are showing up?
Fascinating. It's wonderful getting a youthful input to a difficult adult problem. And it seems from the mouths of babes come the truth. And it seems so rational that if you have a problem, it seems like you can easily solve it. If you have the money and the ways of doing it, you have people that need employment. And these seem to be simple solutions, right? Well, in this complicated world, it does make a difference if you're a Republican or a Democrat today, because we can see what the Republicans are doing because we have a black man in office. This is what they've the oil spill on the Gulf.
You've got some Democrats that have gone against the president, too, on a number of issues.
Yeah. Well,
they've crossed over with the Republicans.
Well, we had the Dixiecrats, too, at one time. But I'm talking about the majority when you know that there's a plot going on against you just because you're black. And people, even black people, aren't owning up to it. We have Ben Carson there.
Wow.
There's so much.
Uncle Ben?
Uncle Ben. Uncle Tom, it should be. There's so much, out here. And it's nice discussing it on my 75th birthday, because I'm glad we've gone through, I think as black people, we've gone through so many genocides. There was a crack epidemic from day one. This racism itself is, Ku Klux Klan. And what we don't talk about is the church incident, where that was beyond imagination how that could happen. But you're so I was sick.
He's still alive in jail.
Yeah, you know what I mean? A 21-year-old.
He murdered 6 clergy. 6 clergy. That wasn't just everyday people.
Right.
He murdered clergy,
yeah,
pastors, preachers, It's deeper than just the black thing.
Yeah.
It's what those people represented.
Right.
Is that not a demon, or what?
It isn't. I would call it a satanic attack.
It was very, well, I believe that it was very strategic, because if you
Exactly.
really wanted to start a race war, you would go to maybe a hip-hop concert where Chris Brown was performing or something like that. But I don't think he wanted to start just a race war, because he attacked the church, which is actually the foundation of free blacks. And so I think that was a very strategic move, and although I don't like it, I think that was well planned out.
Yeah,
was
well,
also
who was
stupid.
behind that?
I don't know who was behind that. but-
Somebody was behind that, right?
Same people who poisoned Flint, Michigan.
Same type of people.
Yeah, yeah. I think we have Rachel calling. I forgot about Rachel.
That's great.
Oh, goodness. No.
One thing that I just wanted to point out was that I feel like a lot of people aren't taking the initiative to visit Flint, and I just wanted to connect this with the fact that President Obama was the first person to visit Cuba in more than 80 years, and the first person to visit Jamaica in more than 30 years. So I think that he'll do something to help Flint and any other. There's probably going to be another incident that shows up. But I think he'll help that before he leaves office, and I'm really proud of the things that Obama has done while he's in office. And I just want to say a general thank you to him.
Out of your 12 years, he's been president for most of your life, right?
Since I was 5.
Wow.
See what kind of incentive that gives you? In my day, we had Tarzan. King of the jungle and stuff.
But here we are approaching another historic election, honestly.
Right.
And, you know, we've got to encourage, you know, our young people who have been, you know, they have been, you know, hurt and they're angry by the things that they're seeing going on. So the question is, you know, why should I even vote? You know, I'm going to a conference with Black Youth Vote, you know, this weekend where in D.C. with the National Coalition of Black Civic Participation. And, you know, they're starting to galvanize and mobilize all of these youth around, you know, in America to get them excited about voting. But in all actuality, you know, I mean, even I am like, you know, but why? I mean, what are these candidates talking about? You know, we have crazy Donald Trump on one side, and then, you know, we have on the other side, you know, seems to be a bunch of promises with no you know, with no substance, and, you know, so at the end of the day, you know, we've got to continue to raise these issues and to make sure that these issues are on the agenda of whomever's in leadership. And we've got to continue to fight for those seats at the table, to hold these people accountable for what they say they're going to do, or, you know, make them do what they say, what they're not saying they're going to do. So we've really got to focus on, you know, making sure that our agenda is on the table for this coming election and moving forward, because if we're not included, then, you know,
well, like Rev says,
how are we going to help each other?
We have to figure out what our agenda is, and we present that to whoever's president. We have to make sure that our interest is taken care of by whoever's going to be president. But I think Hillary and Bernie together as a team, President Clinton and Vice President Bernie Sanders.
Uh-oh. Maybe I should step out the room.
Yeah, I'm going that way. You know,
I mean, that's my fantasy team.
Oh, really?
But can you imagine what could happen with that?
I really wonder if Hillary Clinton becomes president, who her vice presidential candidate would be. I really, and you know, nobody asked those questions in the process. And I think people should ask those questions before you get to the convention.
That's right.
You need to know, and I was explaining this the other night at the Schomburg to the people. Before you elect another mayor, you need to know who he or she plans to bring in as the police commissioner. You need to know who they plan to have in charge of the Department of Education. You need to know what kind of people, what kind of staff are they going to draw together, because it's going to have an immediate impact upon our lives. Another thing with this, the conference you're going to, how do you become a delegate? Because that's the key piece, not the voting.
Right.
People, you don't vote and elect the president in this country. The Electoral College does that. So how do you become a delegate in the process to make the vote count? And that is something our people are not looking at. How do you become a delegate? How do you cast the literal vote for the presidency of the United States? Because our going to the ballot box doesn't do it. That doesn't mean a thing. Also, another thing with electronic voting, that stuff can be hacked into. I just don't trust it. I just don't trust it.
People could steal a bunch of ballots from a physical thing. There's no really any way to secure it. But see, one of the problems with this election, like so many other elections, is that the choices are idealistic, stupid, or really annoying. So there's Bernie and Hillary, who are both really idealistic, which are, in my opinion, the best choices.
Amen.
But the other thing is that they're not completely realistic.
Bernie isn't.
I think, yeah, Bernie isn't.
Free college, I mean, come on.
No.
Well, when I was at City College, you know what it cost? You know what it cost years ago?
Well, you better get a
you know what it cost to go to City College? It was like $250 a semester.
That was last century.
I know, but the question is, why is it now impossible
Because they're making
for
money.
you to go to college?
Because they're making money.
The country has money to spend on what we have to get them to understand, no, you're not wasting our money in Iraq and all these foreign countries killing people $1 billion a day. If they took some of that money, we could educate our young people. We can educate. There's money to educate. There is money to provide health care. There's money for everything that needs to be done, but they're squandering it on foolishness so that the 1% can get whatever it is that they're getting.
Just put in your mind for a second Trump as president.
Oh, for
Now,
God's sake.
That should scare you to death right there.
It
all right?
scares me.
All right?
I have
heard him
options.
this morning, and I shudder to think that man becoming president.
I don't think they'll allow it.
I mean,
you're
wow.
going to see them. You're going to see how guppies kill their young and eat their young.
Now, if Hillary and Bernie don't
do
see the writing on the wall and get together and sweep the House and the Senate and take over, where we can get a little fantasy land going again.
But our people
And
have to
we can
vote.
at least think
They have
about
to
it.
vote for Congress and for Senate. They have to vote for the senators and the House of Representatives.
All right, we got 45
They've
seconds.
got to do that.
And so maybe we can take next 45 seconds to convince you to vote Democrat, whoever runs, no matter anything but Trump, the chump from New York. And with that, thank you for coming. But you know, the God in me loves the God in you, and the only reason I'm still here for 75 years because I have God in my life, and I have a gorgeous family to enjoy life with. And you out there, my family also. The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned next week for more of the Gilchrist experience. Power to the people. Go vote.
More power to the people.